We are back in the black hole of real estate, and I'm getting an increasing number of communications regarding what type of market we're in. And right now, I'm going to answer the question if we just entered into a buyer's market. This is your host, Ron Wysakarski, for the black hole of real estate. And there are a growing number of people that feel like we are in a buyer's market. And I want to give you some context for that, because by definition, we would find that a buyer's market would occur when there are more than 6 months worth of inventory in a given market. So if there were 5,000 homes for sale, and we looked at how long it would take to sell those properties, if there was 1,000 selling per month, then it would take less than 6 months for those homes to sell. So that would be the definition of still a seller's market. 6 months of inventory, so would be, if there were 6,000 homes for sale and 1,000 were selling each month, it would take 6 months. Just do the math on that. That would be right at the balancing point of a market. So we would need to see more inventory or less sales or some combination of each, so that the math would tell you it would take longer than 6 months. Quite often a listing agreement can be for, it's any time that you negotiate, but quite often it's 6 months. And what we're finding right now is there are a growing number of listings that don't sell in the first 6 months. So that might suggest it's leaning towards a buyer's market. But in local markets where I am in Florida, we're not at the 6 month inventory mark. So by definition, it's still a seller's market. But why would it feel like a buyer's market? Because the perception is that we're entering into a time where buyers can compete more easily. And if you look at the last few years, that absolutely is the case. It wasn't that long ago, in a couple of years, during the COVID times, when properties were selling at or above the listing price in a matter of minutes, not days or weeks, and buyers were waiving appraisals, waiving inspections, putting large amounts of non-refundable escrow money in with the offer. And I would wonder back, if looking at that, some people certainly gave up some liberties. Now, I would argue that they made out pretty well in most cases, because even though they paid accelerated amounts, the market still went up past that to where we are today. We do see a number of properties going on the market. We do see the inventory levels climbing. And because it's, relatively speaking, easier to buy a house with less competition than a few years ago, the buyers do feel like it's a buyer's market. And I don't fault them for that. I can understand why. But I also know that the sellers, if they look at the way things have always been calculated, as whether it's a buyer's or seller's market, it by definition is still a seller's market. So sellers do feel like they've got a shot to be in control. Now, what's interesting is, as listing inventory increases, you would think that showings would be exploding right now. And the fact is, not every market has a lot of showings. So it could get really, really, really interesting over the summer if things don't change from what they've been the last couple of months. Now, properties are still selling. It's taking longer. They're selling for about the same that they were last year. There's a statistic with NAR that says in our market, sales volume was off 1.9% as far as price. So if you had a $400,000 home, maybe it's selling for $4,000 less, maybe $7,500 less than last year. We've also experienced markets that increase 1 or 2% per month. So I'd say it's relatively neutral right now. And of course, it's always specific to location and condition and amenities for that property. So it's about where it was last year. Maybe it's a little bit off. There's some numbers that certainly say that, but that number could be skewed. If there were luxury purchases where they were asking $1.5 million and they sold for $1.2 million, $1.3 million, that could definitely alter a market. There are some sales like that, albeit in most years and most markets that would happen. But what we're experiencing right now is on both sides. Sellers feel like it's a seller's market. because the inventory is still below the 6-month mark, and buyers feel like it's a buyer's market because they're getting better opportunities than they were a few years ago. Now, not necessarily better deals, but better opportunities with less competition does feel better. And that's where we're going to travel over these summer months. And I believe the experience is going to be that with interest rates remaining flat, Fed didn't make any changes, probably not going to make any at the next meeting, probably end of summer. It's going to be a very telling market of direction. We know that historically, the week before and after tax time, there's increased activity, not necessarily writing offers and contracts, but more people paying attention. And why wouldn't they? The school years are ending, the tax time is done, you've just done your financials. It's a really good time to do it. And people do get curious as the weather gets a little bit nicer, and especially in the northern areas where it's kind of cold or snowy or rainy. The weather gets better, people want to get out. Why not browse the houses? Why not home shop? We're getting ready for the end of school year. A lot of people feel a move is in their best interest, whether it's upsizing or downsizing. People are retiring at the end of these times. They're making tax decisions, whether to buy a property or sell a property. These are all things in the mix right now. So I do anticipate there will be increased activity. And with that, there'll be more properties going under contract than perhaps the months in the January, February, March, even April of this year. So I do think there's an uptick in activity and offers and contracts, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to remain a seller's market, less than 6 months of inventory. That could change rapidly. If a hedge fund decides to start dumping properties, or a big portfolio investor decides they want to liquidate, maybe move into a different investment vehicle altogether outside of real estate, or maybe just go from residential to commercial. I mean, these things happen. Maybe they want to develop a land tract or put up new houses. So this could change in the dynamics of buyer and seller market. But as we sit here today, it's still a seller's market. I do feel that it's going to take longer for a home to sell, and they may have to negotiate a little on price, a little bit more than they have in the past few years. And setting that aside for some home sellers might be problematic. They may only be looking at a sale from a few years ago and feel that it's a relevant sales comparable to this year when we know that it's not. I mean, a comp outside of a few months right now, especially in areas with storm damage like hurricanes in Florida, 2-3 months is an eternity to hold out for that comp and cling to it. And we do have a large segment of sellers that feel the prices are still going up, and they believe the prices and conditions from a couple of years ago still apply to today. And for all I know, they might be right, especially as we head into the summertime. Now, what I would look for if I was buying a property, I would look for something that's been on the market for a while where they've struggled and they're not getting showings, offers, or successful contracts and closings. So that might be an opportunity, and someone may need to capitulate, to sell for a lot less than they might have even a week or a month ago, because there could be a lifestyle change or a change in circumstance within their life that causes these offers that were lower than they wanted just a month or so ago, causes them to be more compelling, because now there's a different motivation that may have nothing to do with buying and selling. It could be a life situation that dictates the sale. So if you are looking for a deal, I would identify the properties you want to see. I'd float some offers out there in writing, see what they say. If you write the offer up at a price that you like, that makes sense to you, and the seller says yes, well, off to the races. You got a great deal. And if they come back with a counter offer, well, then you could just make a business decision and decide for yourself, is that price make sense to me today and for tomorrow, and would I like to move forward? And if not, it's okay. Not every offer goes under contract, we know that, and not every seller is ready to sell. Same for the buyers. I would say without hesitation, it's a great time to be in the market right now, because the uncertainty is causing some properties to sell for less than they might in other markets. And I also think that there's still people out there that when they see the only home in an area that they like come up for sale, they might be getting an offer right at the list price. Hope this helps you out about buyers and sellers market. Look forward to catching up with you the next time. definitely give us a subscription and a thumbs up and a like. We'll talk to you soon. This is Ron Wojciechowski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.